discussing these difficult situations where a woman's husband goes missing and is declared dead, and then she remarries and he turns up again. So we had just seen that Rav Ashi said, no, Rav Ashi is going to say something new. I'm Rav Ashi. If there's a rumor that the first husband is alive and she's remarried, that's not a problem. Like, if he actually shows up or you get witnesses or something, that's a problem. But you hear rumors, not to worry about that. So, hey, Colin, what kind of rumor are we talking about? Ilema called the Basar Nisuin. If you say that after she got married to the second guy, then there's a rumor that the first guy's still around. Hamar of Rav Ashi Chadozino. This is nothing new. Rav Ashi had already said this. And often the Gemara says, like, don't start putting things in the Mishnah that are repetitive, right? Like if he already said this, then what's he saying here? The Amar Rav Ashi, what's this other source? He said in another source that don't worry about rumors, any kind of rumor that would forbid the woman to her current husband. If it's only a rumor, don't worry about it. So this would be under that rule. So the answer is here, since she actually went to the court, she got certification from the court that she can remarry. So that would be like a rumor before. It would be like a rumor that would be like before the marriage to the second husband, the Titzar, and she would be prohibited because even according to Rav Ashi, if there's a rumor that the first husband is around, then don't get married until you verify it, right? Now, it's a little unclear to me, like why we would, because the rabbis said that the woman has to come to court and to get their certification to remarry. So that kind of indicates that there is a suspicion that maybe, or a concern that maybe the first husband is still alive, and so then maybe the rumor carries more weight. Okay, but so Rav Ashi is telling us that no, that even in the case where you might give the rumor more weight, it's still just a rumor. Okay, that's good to know. Nisei Salpi based in Teitze. Now the Mishnah has said that if she remarried and she had the court's approval, right, then it doesn't matter. She has to divorce the second guy and she can't go back to the first guy. Okay, which I don't know if anyone pointed out. I'm sure that they did over the last few days. I mean, it's very disturbing to me. It's like, what is the court for if not to have the broad shoulders to take responsibility for its decision?
Right.
So I don't know what to say about that, but I just wanted to note it. Amar Ziri said, we actually don't rule like this Mishnah because of what was studied elsewhere in the study hall, in the academy. The Tani Bei Midrasha, we have a brisa from the academy. However, based in Sheshach Chama. Let's say you have a case of, you go to court and say, is Shabbos over yet today? Okay, and it's cloudy, it's a dark day, right? And the court rules, yes, Shabbos is over. And then everybody goes and lights their Havdalah candle. And then the clouds part, and it turns out the sun is still up, right? And it's still Shabbos, right? In the end, you saw the sun. Ein Zuhara. That's not a that's not a based in mistake, right? That's not a mistake in what is the rule, what is the tradition, right? Elatos, that's considered an error, right? It's a factual error, right? The court is not saying, in this situation, this is the rule. No, we know the rule. The rule is if the sun is up, it's Shabbos. If the sun is down, it's not Shabbos anymore. What did they make a ruling on the facts of the matter, right? They thought the facts of the matter were the sun is set. Turned out they were wrong. So that's a different category. So the analogy in our case, they're ruling on the facts. They're ruling on, is the first husband alive or not, right? So it's not a a situation where they're establishing, what are the principles of the matter and how do we rule between these two opinions. No, everybody understands if the first husband is alive, she can't remarry. They're just ruling on the facts of the case. So that's a different thing than a different kind of case. But Rav Nachman said, Harahi, no, this is actually it's a ruling, and our Mishnah is consistent with this price. Amar of Nachman, Teda, what's my proof that the case of the woman's husband being alive or dead is like the rules of law, not the facts that they're considering. In the whole Torah, how many witnesses do you need to establish something? 2 witnesses, right? 1 witness is not usually considered significant or sufficient. But here we say, in the Mishnah's case, we do believe the 1 witness. My Tama, why love Mishum Doraihi? Wouldn't you say it's because they're ruling that 1 witness is sufficient here? I think I just missed a page. But Rava says, what's my proof that this kind of thing is just an erroneous ruling in the facts of the matter? If, let's say, you have a case where the court is asked to rule if this certain type of fat is permitted to eat, and then they saw a reason to say it's no good. And then they change their minds and say, actually, we were wrong. This kind of fat is okay to eat. We don't listen to, like, we go by their first opinion. But where a single witness comes and talks and testifies about the death of the husband, Sharina, we let her remarry. Asutrei Asarna, and if 2 witnesses come and say, actually, he's alive, then we discount the first witness, right? We don't say that's sufficiently valid in the face of conflicting testimony by 2 witnesses. But then, let's say another single witness comes and says, oh, now he's dead, right? So he could have died after the pair of witnesses claimed he was alive. Then another witness came and says, now he's dead. My Tama, what's the reason? Lav Mishum Detaosu, isn't it because their first so why do we allow when the 2 witnesses come, why do we have Beis Din go back on their ruling, right? It's because clearly they made a mistake in the facts of the case, right? It wasn't that they, it is the case. It is true that if you have 1 witness, you go by the 1 witness, but the 2 witnesses came afterwards, and that reveals that the facts of the case were wrong, not that the methodology was wrong. So that shows that it's the facts of the case that we're talking about here. If you have Rabbi Elazar severed to, and by the way, Rabbi Elazar also says that it's a factual error that we're dealing with. Titania. We have Brisa Rabbi Elazar Amar Yikav Adina Sahar. Let the law break the mountain. In other words, like it's kind of a brute force law. V'tavi chatas shmena. She should bring a chatas offering, a sin offering, because she had actually slept with this other guy, with the second guy, but it wasn't her fault. So it's a sin offering. Now, if you want to say that, okay, when they gave her permission to marry, it was a factual error. Mishum hachem asya korban. Okay, that fits. That's why you bring a korban.
Dov, question: is there a statute of limitations on all of this? Let's say the first witness says whatever, and then X number of days later, weeks later, the 2 witnesses come forward and dispute what the first witness is saying. How long do we allow this to go on, in essence?
Yeah, so
the Gemara address that?
Is she always in kind of limbo?
Yeah, limbo. Right?
Yeah, good question. I don't think there would be. I mean, it doesn't sound like it.
Right.
Yeah, it could be years later that evidence comes out. I was just we had a scholar in residence in the shul for
Mr. Shapiro,
and he referenced a case, the case of the Dakar submarine in Israel in like the 70s, I think. This submarine, I think they got from France or something. It set up from France and never arrived in Israel,
Yeah.
right? And it was completely, they had no idea, and there were all the, submariners on board, those that were married, they had wives who were Agunas. So the chief rabbi at the time, Rav Goren, allowed them to remarry, basically.
Yeah.
And it was
So,
not until the 90s, the late 90s, that they actually discovered the wreck of the submarine.
yeah.
And it was, then it was clear that the facts of the matter were correct, that they were dead.
I was there Sunday and saw I think it's Dr. Shapiro. He spoke
Yeah.
about the halak, the relationship between the Muslim community and the Jewish community.
Oh, I missed that one.
Yeah, it was very good.
Yeah, he's
Basically,
amazing.
he said, he said that Islam was far from our worst enemy.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Um,
He was excellent speaker. I enjoyed it.
yeah, he's very good. He gives you the feeling that he was a fly on the wall, whatever
Right.
historical period he's in, he's so familiar with everything,
Yeah, it was
that,
good.
and he has great delivery. Yeah. Okay. So we said, so so if you say that they made a mistake with the facts, okay, so then I understand why she brings a sin offering. But if you say that it was the methodology that they erred with, and she followed their methodology, their ruling, then she should not be liable for a sin offering. They should be liable, right? If the court makes a mistake and people act on that advice, on that ruling, then it's the court's responsibility if it's a methodology error. So it seems like it is a methodology error. So my answer is Vidilma, because I realize maybe there is an opinion that if it's, yes, everyone agrees that if the whole community acts in accordance with an error of the court in their methodology, then it's the court's responsibility. But an individual, there's a dispute. Some say the individual is still responsible, and some say the court is responsible. So maybe Rebbe Lezer holds it's the individual is responsible then too. But then the Gemara says, "Yimkein my yikov adin zahar." So then, when did he use this expression that the law should break the mountain? That implies that they weren't exercising all of their intellectual powers, to get to the bottom of it. Okay, so it does seem that that he's implying that they made a methodological mistake. Okay, last thing the mission was harura based in linase. If the court allowed her to remarry, but she didn't remarry, she went and slept with other men, but not within a marriage, right? So the Mishnah said, what did the Mishnah say about that? Just a second. Let's quote. One thing about these Artsur Gemaras. I had to turn back every time you turn back one page, you got to turn back 5 pages. The Mishnah says they never gave her license to sleep around. They gave her license to marry. She went and slept around, and then it turned out that it was wrong, that her first husband was still alive. Then she is the one responsible for for the sin offering. So Gemara wants to know, my kilkla, what does it mean she messed up, right? She acted improperly. Does that mean that she like slept around or what? Rabbi Lezer says no. He says, zinsa. That means that she slept with other men, not within marriage. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it's not talking about that. It's talking about Amon Kohen Gadol, Rusha V'Chalusol Kohen Hedyot. So what she did wrong was not sleep around. What she did wrong was marry improperly, right? And she married a Kohen that she wasn't supposed to marry. Now, Mandia Zinsa. So if you say that she's responsible if she slept around, so certainly she's responsible if she married improperly. If you say that what the Mishnah is referring to is that we're marrying a Kohen improperly, then she's liable because she's actually violating a commandment. But sleeping around is not violating the commandment. It's considered, maybe it's not considered proper behavior, but there's no rule. There's no rule in the Torah that a single woman can't sleep with a man, right? My Tama, what's the reason that we let her off the hook? The Amra, Atunu de Shavisin Penuya. Listen, you told me I'm single, right? You told me I could get married. That means I can get married. It also means I can sleep with another man, right? So in other words, that the court's license for her to marry is not specific for marriage. It's referring to her situation. Are you married to the first guy or not? And she's not, then she can do what she wants. We have support for Rabbi Yochanan, who said that it's referring to marrying a Kohen improperly. The Brisa says, same language. If the court told her she could marry and then she went and she messed up. Kagon, for example, says this Brisa, that's an improper Kohen marriage. Then then she is responsible. Actually, every time she sleeps with him, she has to bring a sin offering. That's what Rabbi says. So clearly, here the reason what it's talking about is not sleeping around, but marrying improperly a Kohen. Here it spells it out. And the rabbis say korban. She brings only one korban for everything, for her whole marriage to the second guy. Not for each time she sleeps with him. Umodim chachamim Rabbi, and the rabbis agree. Whether she went and she serially married 5 other men, right? So they say you can get married. She married first guy, divorced him, married the second guy, divorced him, married the third guy, and or maybe he died, whatever. She has a number of marriages following this. So chayavas kol echad v'echad. Yeah, in that case, she is liable for a korban, for a sacrifice on each of the husbands, the subsequent husbands. However, gufin mechulakim, because they're distinct people, right? So in other words, you could distinguish, the rabbis distinguish between marrying one guy and sleeping with him many times. That's a single instance, but marrying 2 guys is 2 different instances. Okay. Second. Hello again.
Hi.
Hi. All right, I'm in the middle of teaching the Daf Yomi, so I'll call you back.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Okay, next Mishnah. A woman who here the case is where she has a husband and son. Now, what's the significance of the son? So as we know, if the husband dies childless, then the woman is subject to yibum, right? If he dies and there is a son, right, then she's not subject to yibum. So here it's going to be important in which order they died, right? If the son dies first, then they're childless, right? And then he dies, then he's childless. If the father dies first, the husband dies first, and the son is still alive, then there's no yibum because he died with a son. Okay, if the son later dies, that doesn't affect the that doesn't suddenly subject her to yibum anymore. Okay, so the husband and the son went abroad. And then they came and said, your husband died, and then your son died. Okay, so when the husband died, they had a son, right? Venices, and so she got married because she's not subject to yibum at all. She can marry whoever she wants. And then it turns out they said, you know what, we got it wrong. First, the son died, so really you were subject to yibum, and you were not permitted to marry the second guy. So what do? Teitze, she has to leave the second husband, all right? Because the facts of the matter are she was subject to yibum. And also, if she had a child who was born either before this knowledge became, even before this kind of change of our knowledge, or afterwards, if she had a child with the second husband, is a mamzer, because she was betrothed, as it were, to the yibum, to the yavam, right? And this was an illegal marriage. It was a marriage in the place of someone she was supposed to be married to. Now, what about the reverse? Now they said, first your son died and then your husband died. Okay, so when the husband died, he was childless. So she's subject to yibum. So she marries the brother, right? And then he said, oops, mistake. Actually, it was the husband that died first. So this yibum is invalid. But the problem with an invalid yibum is it's a forbidden marriage, right? You can't marry your husband's brother, right? Unless it's a situation of yibum. So she went and did it, and then she found out that it was illegal. So Tatse, she has to leave him. And same thing, if any child born between this woman and her husband's brother is a mamzer. Let's say they said your husband died, and then she got married to somebody else. And then they said, oh, you know what? He was still alive when you got married. But now he's dead. Okay. So when she got married the second time, she was actually still married, right? But now she's no longer married, right? So now if she went and wanted to marry the second guy, she would be able to. Taysay, no, she has to leave the second husband because she had, lived with him illegally, so it's kind of a penalty for her. Vlad Rishon Mamzer, if a child was born to her and the second husband before she found this out, or let's say while the husband was still alive, then that child is a mamzer, right? Which, that's the facts of the matter. But she's supposed to leave him now, but if she doesn't leave him and she has a child, then we don't penalize the child. The child is not a mamzer because now that she's living with the second guy, it's like, that's fine. Really, really it's, we don't want her to do it, but she's not married to anybody else. So there's no reason really that to label the child a mamzer. Now, Amrullah Meisbalech, what if they said, if she heard that the husband died, Vinis Kaja, and she got engaged? So remember that there's two stages in marriage, right? There's first what we translate as engagement, but it's really more formal than an engagement. Like when we have an engagement, it's like, yeah, I'm going to marry you one day. But what the Gemara is talking about is that, yeah, there's actually a transaction, right? That there is a formal wedding, but they haven't moved in together yet. Right? They're not living together yet as man and wife. That's the way it was done. That's what the engagement was. So anyway, so she's formally engaged. And then the guy shows up, the first husband shows up. So Muteris Lachserlo, so she's never slept with the new husband yet. She can go back to the first husband, right? Okay. Because the whole problem with going back to the first husband is if you've slept with somebody else, you can't go back to the first husband. So Alpha Pisha Nasala Achron get, even if the second guy gave her a get, right, just to kind of formalize the arrangement, to nullify the kiddushin, which was really invalid because she was still married to the first guy, so it really had no effect. But to make things cleaner and document everything and so on, the second guy gave her a get, a divorce. Lop salaminakuna. So that kind of get, that doesn't mean that she's considered a divorcee. She can still marry a Kohen later on, right? Because it's not a real get. As Zodar Rav Elazar ben Masya, this is what Rav Elazar ben Masya taught. Visha grusha meisha lo yikachu. The Torah says a woman divorced from her husband cannot marry a Kohen. V'lo meisha eno isha, not a woman that's divorced from a guy who's not her husband. So what does it mean, a guy who's not her husband? This is the case, right? Where he's giving a divorce just to dot the I's and cross the T's, but really there's no necessity for a divorce. Now, so Gemara wants to know, my Rishon, my Achron. We said that like a child born, first or last, or early or late in this story, Ilayim Rishon Lifnei Shmua, if you mean a child that was born before she had the second report, the Achron La'achar Shmua, and the later child is after the report that she was still married, at least they have Vlad Mamzer. Like it's the same case. Like what just say, the reason the child is Mamzer because the husband's still alive. We shouldn't go away Lemisna Sefer. No, the reason we're saying like before or after, because one of the later cases in the Mishnah makes a difference, right? If it's before the second bulletin. what was that case? If they told her your husband's dead, she got married. And then they said, you know what, he was alive, but now he's dead. So then there's a difference between, the child born earlier and child born later. The child born earlier is actually a mamzer because the first husband was still alive. Okay. Our Mishnah accords with Rabbi Akiva that says that there's no that marriage does not apply, doesn't take effect if there's a negative commandment against it. But the rabbis say that you can't have a mamzer from a Yevama and somebody else, like a Yevama who's supposed to marry the brother but marries somebody else. That's not a mamzer. So Gemara says, "Lema ein mamzer mechayve lavin." Like that's the same thing Rabbi Akiva is saying, right? It's not a one of the erva. It's not one of the the categories of people you can't marry. It's a regular negative commandment. So Gemara says, "Haitana hachtana de Rabbi Akiva." This Tana is the Rabbi Akiva. The Amar mechayve lavin de shar have mamzer. He actually says that that generally speaking, a regular negative commandment does produce a mamzer. If you marry somebody you're not supposed to marry, that's like a kohen or whatever, that is actually a mamzer, which we don't accept that opinion, but that's Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Mechayve lavin gride lahav mamzer. But oh yeah, sorry, I read it wrong. The commandments about like incest and relatives, marrying relatives, that produces a mamzer, but a yivama, a yibum thing that you violate, that doesn't produce a mamzer. I'll review this. I'm a Rav in the name of Rav. Where do you get the idea that that marriage does not take effect to somebody who is a Yevama, right? If she's tied to the husband's brother, the late husband's brother, then marriage to somebody else doesn't even take effect, right? So you can go and somebody can try to marry you, but it's meaningless, right? Because you're tied to the Yavam. Where's the source for that? In the commandment about Yibum, the Torah says the wife of the dead husband should not or cannot, that's how we're going to interpret this, cannot be married to a stranger, to someone other than the brother. Lo teheba havaya lazar. In other words, it's not that you wouldn't translate it should not marry, but could not marry. In other words, it doesn't even work, if she tries to marry somebody else. Shmuel says, Bani Yosenu, because of our poverty, because I'm not sure if that's really how to interpret the verse. Should it be cannot marry or should not marry? Tzricha get. So we have to say that she has to get a get from the second guy, because it's not clear to me that that's what the Torah means. Maybe the Torah means should not marry, but if she does marry the other guy, it takes effect. It's wrong, and she has to get a divorce. Okay. And the Gemara explains, because Shmuel's, as I explained, Shmuel's uncertainty is whether the Torah means could or should. So since we don't know, we have to go with having her get a divorce. Only Rav Mari bar Rachel or Rav Ashi. Rav Mari, the son of Rachel, said to Rav Ashi, the law is like this latter statement of Shmuel. It's interesting, by the way, he's called Rav Mari bar Rachel, right? He's called by his mother's name, the son of Rachel. Rachel was the daughter of Shmuel. There was a whole story that she was kidnapped and she was freed, but she had a child with the captor who converted or something. The whole complicated story. But basically, the interesting thing here is that this Rav Mari is a grandson of Shmuel, and he's saying, guess what? The halacha is like my grandfather. Rashi says, now that Amemar says that Shmuel, that we rule like Shmuel, that you need a get for a Yevama who marries outside the brother. If the Yavam was a Kohen, and then she went and married somebody else, so then he can't marry her anymore. He's a Kohen. He can't marry a widow, a divorcee, right? So then Choletz v'Shari'la, so he can do Chalitza, and then she can stay with the second husband. Itgure Itgar. So the Gemara says, what? So we're going to let him, so this wouldn't apply to anybody else, right? It only applies to the Kohen, because the Kohen is not allowed to marry her anymore once she's married the second guy, right? So so now we're rewarding her for, as it were, if it were not a Kohen, then why are we rewarding her? Because he's a Kohen, and then she can stay with the second husband. Ella imhaya Yevama Yisrael nosin lasheni get. What we want to say, what we should have said is, if he's not a Kohen, if the brother who she's supposed to marry is not a Kohen, then the second one has to give her a get, and then she's permitted to the Yavam, right? To the so it's we're completely recasting what was said here. In other words, that she has to go back to the first guy, but she needs a divorce from the second guy. Rav Gidel said, Yevama kedushin ba nisuin yeshba. In this idea of a Yevama, of a woman who is tied to a Yavam, the engagement doesn't take effect, right? There's no, but nisuin yeshla. But if he moves in with her, then that counts, right? To make him the husband, and then she requires a get to go back to the Yavam. So Gemara says, wait a minute, but it's like a sequential thing, right? That's the way you get married. First you do Kiddushin and then Nisuin. When is this Nisuin without Kiddushin? When is this marriage without engagement? You're skipping an essential step here. How does that work? So the answer is, no, we have to reread it. Kiddushin v'Nisuin Einba. Both engagement and marriage do not apply. Okay, so we're going back to what we originally thought. Or you could answer, my nisuin yesh. What does it mean that you can have marriage without the engagement? Business, we're talking about, not that they're married, but that it counts. If she goes and sleeps with somebody else, she needs a divorce to go back to the Yama. There's like Rav Hamnuna who says a woman who is waiting for the Yavam marriage, and then she slept with somebody else, then she can't go back to the Yavam, because it's like adultery, right? The woman who sleeps with someone other than her husband, she can't go back to the husband. So the same with the Yavam. Or you could say really it's understand it as written, Kiddushin Einba, Nisuin Yeshba. There's no engagement, it doesn't take effect, but marriage takes effect. Why do we say that? Because we're afraid that people are going to mix it up with other cases of kind of being partly married, as it were, like the case where a woman whose husband goes overseas and is lost. It's in the sense that not because she's actually married, but because we want to be particularly careful, or we want to penalize the woman for not investigating or whatever. They in the group, they took a vote. In other words, there was some kind of a convention, or a conference. They got together to resolve some halachic issues, and they decided in Kiddushin Tosim Yevama. Kiddushin, the engagement, doesn't have any effect on the Yevama. Oh, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lo Mishnah Seinu Hizu. We have a Mishnah. What did you need to have a conference about this for? That's in the Mishnah. That's not. Mishnah says, if you say to a woman, I'm marrying you, and it'll take effect after I convert. So I'm not Jewish. I want to marry you. I'm giving you the ring now. and when I convert, that'll complete the process, right? That doesn't count. Or some other future conditions. Lachar shetiskari, after you convert, lachar she'ashtachar, after I become freed from being a slave, lachar shetishtachari, or after you become freed, lachar she'al misbalech, or after your husband dies, this marriage, this ring will take effect for me. Lachar shetamus achosech, or after your sister dies, like I'm married to your sister, but after she dies, I want to marry you. Or after you get chalitza from your yavam, this doesn't count. You can't have a marriage, excuse me, or an engagement conditioned on a future event. So this is what we're talking about, right? Like, whether you have to have a conference about this, it's right in the Mishnah that that future events we don't take into account. Amalei, so he answered, if I hadn't lifted up for you the shard, literally, in other words, if I hadn't like shone some light on this, you wouldn't have found the pearl underneath. In other words, what he's trying to say is that like by giving you the idea that Kedushin can't be affected with the Yevamot, that led him to the correct understanding of the Mishnah. Otherwise, he would have thought that an act of acquisition that will only take effect in the future is never valid, even if there's nothing that stops it now. So you could imagine something that, like, it's one thing to say, we're married as of now after you convert, but the conversion is holding up the marriage, right? But what about a case of, we'll be married after I give you $50, right, tomorrow, right? Well, that might be okay, right? Because there's nothing that prevents you from giving her the $50 now. So what he's saying is that that there even if there may be future conditions that do not hold up the marriage, the case of something that has to be done in order to make the marriage valid, or eligible for marriage, that's what the Mishnah is talking about, the second brisa, right? So by revealing that, then we understand that our Mishnah is talking about the same thing. Okay, I think this is maybe a good place to stop. Yeah, I think we'll stop here. It's almost 9. Yeah. Okay. Have a good day.
Thank you.
See you.
See you soon.
Bye.